Hello everybody, and today we are going to explain this datetime library in Python. This library is so important in Python, and as you can see it will take a little bit longer time than usual libraries, and for that be careful not to miss any information. It might be a little bit confusing, but all is easy with me. Let's see first some information about this library, Datetime. We know it's a built-in library, and how we import it. First, built-in libraries means that you don't need to download it from external resources, so it's just with Python when you install it. And now how to import it? You have this way, import datetime, and that's the first way to import it. There's another way, you can see it in another video I made in this channel. And let's begin. First, let's see how this datetime is made. When you import this datetime module in your Python code, you have four principal options. You first made a date object, or a time object, or a datetime object, or a time delta object. We will see each one in a separate part in this video, and for each object you choose, there's some functions and some attributes that works only on that. Okay, and now let's start with this date object. Okay, and now we have two main ways to make a date object. The first way, as you can see, we just type here the name of the library, which is datetime, and then dot and date, open and close parentheses, and here you have three needed and required parameters: the year, the month, and the day. So this what do is make a date object that represents a date, year, month, and a day in an idealized calendar. So that is the first way, and we will see it in PyCharm in a minute. And for the second way, it's easy. We just need to type date.today. So what is the difference between the previous one and this? So as you can see here, we don't have any parameter required, because the previous one you choose the year, the month, and the day you want to put in this date object, but in here you just make a date object that represent today's date. And for that, let's try all what we have talked about in PyCharm. As we saw, import datetime, that's the way to import it. And let's make a variable called, for example, date object, make it equal to datetime dot date, as we saw. And here we need to first, as you can see, it's an integer, put the year 2020, the month, let's put the current month, and here, sorry, yes, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong. Okay, and here, as you can see, we make a date object. And a special thing, and something you should know, that here you don't write 05. Okay, just type that 5, and when we run this code, it will run very good. But here when we put a 05, it will give an error, invalid token. And when we want, what is this? When we want to print this date object, you can see it's adding this 0 automatically. For the other way, you just need, without inserting the parameters, just need here to make a date dot today, no parameters needed. Print it, and you will see it will take the same form and here's the current, and this today's date object here. Okay, for now we saw how to make an object, a date object, and now let's see some functions and some attributes for this object. The first one here, as we saw, we have two main ways to make the object, and we have the first attribute is year. This year attribute returns the year of the date object, and we will see that in the example. And now let's see the other one, it's month. The same way as you think, it will return the month of the date object. Here we have the day, it will return the day of the date object. And we now have something special, a weekday. Remember, this is not an attribute, it's a function applied to a date object. What that do is returning the day of the week as an integer. So for Monday, this function will return 0, and for Sunday it will return 6. You will ask me, what will I do if I want the Monday as 1 and the Sunday as 7? As we live in the normal life, we don't use 0 and 6, we use 1 and 7. For that we have another function, which is ISO weekday. This ISO weekday, remember here you add just the ISO and the same, no attributes inside here. It will return the day of the week as an integer, where Monday is 1 and Sunday is 7. Let's try all what we've talked about. Okay, this is the same example. We have this date object 1, and it's assigned to 2020, 5 and 1. And now we want this object to take the attribute year first and print it out. You can see it's 2020. Month, it will give us the 5, and the day, you can see it will give us 1. And for the function we saw, weekday, this is a date of this is a day. So here in the weekday, it will give us 4. Okay, and if we want to apply the ISO weekday, the ISO is for Monday it's a 1, and for Sunday it's a 7. So it's, as you can see, 5, which is like you can see. And now for the time object. And as you can expect, there's a lot of similarity between the time and the date objects. And now let's begin. We have one main way to make an object of time type. Just type here the name of the library, dot and time, open and close brackets. We have here several attributes that you should make, and you should put, which are hours, minutes, seconds and microseconds. And as you can see, the hours are required, but the minutes and seconds and microseconds are optional. So you can just put an object of time with just hour and minutes, just hour, minutes and seconds, but you don't need to put them all. And as you can see here, make a time object that represents a time, hour, minute, seconds and microseconds. Let's check this out. Okay, and now let's create a time object. Voila, time dot time. The name of the library and the name of the object. Here you can see we can put 5, which represents 5 hours. Printed. This is how it is represented. You can add here some minutes, add 59 seconds, and for the last option you can add a lot of microseconds. and here is how it is represented. But be careful, you can't make hours and seconds and microseconds without minutes. You should put them in that order. So if we want to remove, for example, the minutes, okay, it will take that as minutes and will take that as seconds, and because there's not a lot of seconds as 123,000, it will give us an error. And now we have the attributes that are for the time module. And now we will see some attributes for the time object. First one, as you expect, it's the hour. You return the hour of the time object, the minute, return the minute of the time object, the second, and the microsecond. And remember, here you don't put an S in none of them, just hour, minute, second, and microsecond. Let's try this out. The same example here, and we will use hour first. Give us 5 minutes. A minute, sorry, don't put an S. Second, as you can see, and for the last one is micro, not milli, it's microsecond. Print all the microsecond, and all of those attributes can be used in each one of your projects. And now for the datetime object. As you can see, it's formed with date and time, so it's grouping the date and the time attributes and functions and all of those, and you will see it's so similar, and you will often use this instead of just the date and just the time. Let's see first how to make this object. For that we have 3 main ways. The main way, as you can see, it's just datetime, and now the object name, datetime, open and close parentheses, and you have here the year and the month and the day are required, as we saw in the date object. And here we have the hour, minute, second, microsecond for the time, which are optional. We saw in the time object the hour is not optional, it's required, but here in the datetime it's optional. So you have here, don't forget, year, month, day, hour, minute, second, microsecond. You should put them in that order. So this, what this will do is making a datetime object that represents a date and a time, year, month, day, hour, minute, second, and microsecond. This is the first main way to do it, and you have this second main way. This second main way is by putting datetime.today. Today, what will this do? It will make a datetime object that represents today's date and time, not just the date as we saw in the date object, and not just the time. It will represent the date and the time of today. And as you can see here, current local date and time. It just depends on your location and give you the date and time. The third way is datetime.now. We will not explain this a lot and go deep in it. It's just the same as today. As you can see here, today don't take any parameter, but now take a time zone, which write tz equal none. It's by default like this, and you can add a time zone. It will make the same thing, but you can specify a time zone. For that, let's try those out. Let's start with creating dt object equal datetime. Okay, open and close parentheses. 2019, for example, 5/8. Those are the year, the month, and the day. We start now with the time. Let's make 9 hours 45 minutes, and for example 12 seconds and 123 microseconds dt, and let's print it and see how it will look. It will look like this. This is the date and this is the time. That's the first way to do that. The second way is to make dot today. No parameters needed, just print it. You can see this is the current and the local date, and this is the local time, and here it is now. So if you left it without tz parameter, it will give it by default none, and you can add the tz. For adding tz, there's an for adding specifically a tz, there is actually a library specific for that. We are not going to explain it for today, so we are just will work with now as the same of today. As you can see, let's show you that there is no difference between both without any parameters. Oh, sorry. This is 2. Okay. And as you can see, just print the same thing. There's a missing microsecond here, and that's it. And now for the function and attribute of datetime object. And the beautiful thing is that all the attribute and function are grouped of date alone and of time alone are grouped in this datetime object. First one is year, just dot year, and we'll give you the year. Second is months. Third, as you expect, day. Then hour, then minute, second, and microsecond. Don't forget that we don't add s at the end of each one of those. And after that, after finishing attributes, we have the functions we saw before, the weekday, that give you the day of the week as an integer, where Monday is 0 and Sunday is 6, and the ISO weekday, both are functions with no attributes, returns the day of the week as an integer, where Monday is 1 and Sunday is 7. So those what we saw in the time and the date modules. And now we have two functions just presented in these datetime objects, that are date, that returns the date, year, month, and a day in an idealized calendar. It just gives you the date without the time, and another function which just give you the time without the date. And with all that, let's try all what we've talked about now. Okay, we have this object datetime.today, which is this big object. I'm printing it here. We will give this object first year as an attribute. Print 2020. We really are in 2020. The month, the day, the hour. You can see there's our zeros. That's true. It's a 12. And here we have minutes. Oops. Wait, I'm debugging it. Why? Okay. 44 minutes. Second. And microsecond. And now let's try the functions ISO. And because today is Monday, the first one will give 0 because the Monday is 0 and Sunday is 6, and the other one, which is ISO, will give Monday as 1 and Sunday as 7. And now for the last two are so important. We can just take the date we can just take the date, or we can just take the time. See, three of them. This is the full object, this is the date, and this is the time. And now for the last object, we have the time delta object. What is the time delta object? First, let's see how to import and call this object. Right here is the name of the module, dot time delta, and we now specify the days, second, microsecond, millisecond, minutes, hours, and weeks. All of those are the arguments. All of them are optional, but if you want to make a time delta, you need to specify at least one of them. What that means? This means time delta, it's not a specific time or a specific moment or a day, it is a duration of time. So now you are specifying 7, you mean you are specifying 7 days as a duration. With seconds 5, it's 5 seconds duration. And for that we will see that in PyCharm, and we will see some useful example on it. Okay, now let's make, before doing a time delta, let's make a time.delta time object. A bit fast, sorry. Okay, and now let's make delta. It's called delta, I don't know why. Date, where I don't know how to write now. Dot time delta, and let's specify, for example, days equal 5. So what that means is a duration of 5 days. What is this useful for? Now you can see when we add this dt, which is this date, to delta, which is 5 days, it will give us another date time with 5 days added. Let's test this out. And as you can see, it's not a date, it's a date time, because this is a date time object. And here we can see it's 10, and you can see subtract this, give us minus 5 days, or instead of subtracting this, you can put, instead of positive values, some negative values instead of positive values, and here you can see the same result. Okay, for the last thing about the time deltas, we have here a date object. Okay, first we know that the time delta objects work on dates, on times, and on date times object, not only date times. And for now we have these two different dates. We want to print date 1 minus date 2, and we will see what we will get. Okay, as you can see, 31 days. We can, instead of printing that, we can store it in a value or whatever you want to do with it. You can see here is a time delta variable, time delta result, because when you subtract this from this, you get a duration of time, or we call it a time delta. And now if you want to, instead of print that, type of it, see it's a time delta. That was all for today's lesson. I hope all was what I was explaining is clear. You can now take the recap screenshot and save it in your phone, and I'm sure you will understand it from just one look. And now you can just put a like on below the video. You can subscribe to the channel if you like the content. You can share it with your friends that are interested in this content. Do unsubscribe, do whatever you want, and goodbye.